A lot of times people say like you're either a science mind or you're an arts mind, and that's not true. In order to be in science and be successful in it, you have to have that creative arts mind.
This is Lightbulb Moments by USC, a podcast capturing moments of brilliance happening across campus. I'm Jessica Peretta from University Communications. Today, I'm talking with Summer Decker. She uses 3D printing to find creative solutions to old problems. Her creativity helps surgeons prepare for surgery, teaches medical students new techniques, and even helps patients understand their own bodies. We'll hear about a groundbreaking invention, how she inspires her students, and how her love of video games influences her creative thinking.
So you think that your background and your interest in video games and computers led to your work here? You know, it's funny, whenever I start lecturing to anybody, I always say I play video games for a living, just happen to be medical ones. The source data of a lot of our work is obviously medical imaging. I'm in radiology as a department. And so when I started out in college, the work that I was doing was, and I started out as a film major and was really interested in video games. And all of that was data that is then used, for film editing and maybe creating 3D, a 3D environment. So now I look in from the medical side. I have medical imaging as part of my job, and we can take that medical imaging and understanding that the body is not a single picture in time, but that is a 3D object, right? We are 3D objects. And I always tell my students, I say, when you go to the bakery and you have a loaf of bread and we slice that bread, that's radiology right there, right? So the radiologists are looking at the slices and looking and going back and forth. My job is to take all of those slices and push them back together and create a 3D object. So that's why I say I play video games for a living, is because I take those medical images, push them back together, create a 3D version of that person in the computer, and from that point, I can go put them in an augmented or virtual reality environment. I can put that data into a form where we're doing analysis to figure out how your heart's gonna respond if we do a certain procedure a certain way, or I can 3D print it out. I have limitless opportunities of what to do with that 3D data.
There is this emphasis on STEM and less of an emphasis on the arts. So what are your thoughts on how important the arts are or not in your field?
So, I am a huge proponent for STEM, absolutely. But you've started to see a little bit more over the last few years of people saying STEAM, right? And including art in that. And I can tell you in my career, a lot of the most talented surgeons that I knew, even our Dean of Medicine here is a renowned photographer. It is so common for healthcare workers and people in this world to have, not just as a hobby, but actually really excel in the arts. I went to University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That's where I did my undergrad and master's. I was actually a music and film major. I played in the orchestra. I played harp. I was in the drum line. And all of those things are skills that help me learn discipline and learn a different side of my brain and how to exercise that. So I can tell you of surgeons that I work with that have had photography shows at some of the best galleries in the country. Musicians, a lot of musicians. So I think that it's not just as a hobby, but it is almost a lifeline for us, because you need to have where you can walk away from the stress of what you are doing, but also have an outlet for that. And I had kind of gotten away from that where I was at in Florida, and I've been able to really tap back into the arts community here in Los Angeles. I started taking music lessons again. Sounds crazy, but I really want to really encourage students and really anyone listening that a lot of times people say like you're either a science mind or you're an arts mind, and that's not true. In order to be in science and be successful in it, you have to have that creative arts mind.
So thinking about all of the technologies that you've developed, the patents that you have, is there one that you have maybe a connection to, or you feel like you had that light bulb moment?
Absolutely. I had one that really humbled me and educated me in a way I never, ever, ever expected. It would be the 3D printed nasopharyngeal swab for diagnostic testing, which is a lot of words for saying we 3D printed a nasal swab. And this really was one of the biggest challenges of my life. I was in a hospital in Florida, Tampa General Hospital. We were in a hospital like all hospitals in the nation in crisis because we didn't have test kits to be able to figure out who has what. Does that patient have COVID? Does our staff have COVID? Because the nasal swab itself was part of the supply chain shortages that happened in the US. And I'm talking literally day one. So I could tell you the exact day. It was March 13th. I was actually at Tampa International Airport flying out. The airport got shut down. And by that Monday, I was back at work and we started getting emails about supply chain shortages. And they had, the university had just sent everyone home.
And this is during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020.
Yes, March 17th, 2020. At 5 a.m., I had gotten a trauma case because everything has been shut. The university shut. The hospital is only operating on just emergencies. And we had a motor vehicle accident that needed our help to help reconstruct the face of the patient. And so we did our last case, and I knew it was my last case because everybody was being sent home. And I figured 3D at this point was going to be a luxury. If the surgeries aren't happening, they're really not going to need us unless there's a trauma. So much so I actually packed my car and it was parked in valet out front of the hospital. That's how short of a time I thought I would be there. How little I knew. I ran the part into surgery. And as I was standing there with my colleague, Dr. Jonathan Ford and Dr. Connor Barnes from our trauma teams, I received an email from our dean at the time, and he had all of these supplies that we were missing, like masks and gloves and gowns. And it was surreal. Like, every hospital in the country was going through this at the same moment. And one of the things that caught my attention was this test kit. My training in medical school, at the medical school, was in pathology and specializing in imaging, which meant that I studied how do we diagnose diseases. And so it really was like, well, how do we know who has COVID if we don't have the test kit? And it literally said in the email, like, swab, that's the shortage. And so it was so much so that my colleague who works with me, Jonathan, he nudged my foot because I was in the OR and I'm going, I wonder if we could do something about that. And he's like, listen, what's going on? They're telling us. And as we walked out, I said, I've got an idea. And I remember him saying, no, I'm going home. We're going to go. I'm going to go do whatever that, keep working. We're going to publish. And I said, can we just have a couple of hours? And in those couple of hours, the hospital gave us their last test swab so that we could take photos of it and figure out how to make something. And I'm thinking just for my hospital. But what we created those days, we went over the next day and handed some examples over to the infectious disease chair and internal medicine chair. He actually captured a photo of it because he couldn't believe that anyone was still there. And he has a photo, and I look so young in that photo. I just think, like, in that moment, I had no idea what was about to hit me because my life changed forever in that moment. He picked which one he liked. He tested them on himself. We tested him on himself. That was on, like I said, March 17th, the 18th, we gave it to him. By March 20th, we were actually going to bench lab testing with my dear friend and virologist colleague, Dr. Michael Tang. He took our 3D printed swab and he started running, does this even work? Because if it didn't, we'd all go home and we would have tried. We got a call the next day that it was working. And not only was it was working better than the traditional swab.
What was going through your head then?
That light bulb moment was getting Dr. Michael Tang's call. And he said, it's working. And I said, nah, no, it's not. And he said, not only that, it works better. And we said, we don't believe it. Let's test it again. And also, like someone's not going to get necessarily swabbed and then run the test right in that moment. So let's wait for 3 days. Well, let it see. Like, what does it do? Does it leach out? The material leach out? What does it degrade the? And we tested it after 3 days again, and it came back testing better. I mean, it was like lightning striking. How would that even be possible? In fact, the company that I partnered with, which was the company who made the material, I specifically chose a specific 3D printer that was a desktop printer because I knew if this works, I can't go tell them, everyone in the world, that you need a $500,000 printer. You need to have something that's accessible. I'm always keeping that in my head. And so I looked around and I found this printer in our lab that had the surgical grade material, and it was a desktop printer, and it was at a low price point. And so I called them and I said, can I have some more of your material just to make sure that, do you have more of it? Because if I'm working on something and if it works, I don't want to be like, oh, that worked and then we can't use it because you don't have any. They said, we have a warehouse full of it. What are you working on? And I said, hold that thought. And so I'm very grateful that that company, Formlabs, they make 3D printers. They were out of MIT originally, and we had a relationship with them, and they went on this crazy ride with me. So I'm really grateful to them because it needed somebody who was very innovative, and their medical director at the time, Gaurav Manchanda, he and I just sat and said, here's how we can use it. Their whole ethos was getting 3D printing in the hands of the common folks so that we could all be using it and see what innovation. So it was very much in line with what they wanted to do. And so working together, that next aha moment when I called them back and I said, your material that you guys invented over here is able to do this. They had no idea either. And so that was the light bulb moment for all of us. And I'll never forget because we went, oh my God, what's about to happen?
Thinking of the future, do you have any other maybe words of what keeps you going and why you continue doing your work?
I think for me, what keeps me going right now is really getting our field validated and professionalized, if you will. On the clinical side, anyone in clinical medicine, they understand that you have to get reimbursed for the work you're doing. And I've been working with American College of Radiology to get that billing set up. The thing that makes me excited is when I see my residents, the ones that I trained before, and the new ones that are going to come, and I hear how they're using what we trained them in. I see the amazing medical schools that they've gone off to do fellowships at based off of the training that they have. I saw that we were able to increase the amount of people going into radiology as a field, which is such an amazing field. And those are the things that make me proud because I'm just a blip in time, but I see them as the legs running this on.
Thank you so much, Summer. I really appreciate you speaking with me.
Oh, no, thank you for the invite.
Thank you for listening to Lightbulb Moments by USC. You can find this podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music.